Instead of updating a classic, Edgar Wright, funny enough, he inadvertently highlights how much better, smarter, and more entertaining the 1987 film truly was. You really walk away after, I'll tell you what, you watch an 87 movie, watch this, you're going to walk away with a huge new appreciation for the original film. But like a remake, it can reinvent, it can reinterpret, or it can reimagine in great ways. And this one merely replaces. And it replaces everything worth keeping with far less, with uninspired ideas and writing and performances and concepts. I mean, the real question that needs to be asked right now is, what happened to Edgar Wright? What happened to you, man? What happened to you, Edgar Wright? I should start off by saying that I'm a fan of the original 1987 Running Man. Of course, directed by Paul Michael Glaser, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger at the height of his thematic powers as an action star and as a leading man. It was a bright, fun film, a biting satire that skewered fascism and American consumerism and television. Just all around a really fun movie, one that I actually watch, and I have such a renewed and great appreciation for the flick. But we have a new version of that film, which, has come out in the year 2025, that aims to be closer to the original book written by Stephen King under the pseudonym of Richard Bachman, which came out in 1982. Does it succeed? Is it as good, if not better, than the original 1987 film? Before getting to that, before getting to the nitty-gritty details of that, I do want to provide you a bit of a synopsis and, behind the scenes, who made this new picture, this new movie film? Well, it's directed by Edgar Wright, who I'm a fan of, or was a fan of years ago. I love his movies like Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz. Those are two of my favorite comedies of all time. They're easily in my top 10 favorite comedies of all time. Perfect films. And I also am a big fan of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. The rest of his filmography I'm pretty iffy on, to be perfectly honest. But when it comes to The Running Man, it follows a man named Ben Richards, of course, played by Glenn Powell, who participates in this state corporate-sponsored death game that's broadcast across America, where these hunted criminals must survive against elite killers and the general public for the entertainment of a brutalized and oppressed American society. Now, it might not be fair to compare it to the original 1987 film, since this is based more on the Stephen King book, again, written by, under the pseudonym Richard Bachman. But The Running Man, it just arrives with the weight of legacy on its shoulders, a nearly 40-year legacy. And to me, it just buckles under that weight within the first third, and it just gets worse as it goes on. While the original 1987 film was very entertaining, it was bombastic, obviously wonderfully satirical, making it the cult classic that it is today, obviously. This new adaptation just feels so strangely muted and gray and joyless and just stripped of everything that once made the premise, the idea of the premise, so great. What should be just a really vicious and satirical and just high energy action ride instead just plays out like a painfully generic dystopian drama that honestly could be on a streaming service like Netflix that they could just shit out and everyone forget about. That's what this movie feels like all the way through. It is a film that fundamentally misunderstands what made its predecessor so enduring for nearly 40 years now. And the biggest issue is the writing of this film. For a story that's built on the outrageous spectacle of a government-sanctioned death game show, the script is just flat. It's so shockingly flat and dull. Dialogue is mechanical and exposition-heavy. Characters speak with little personality at all, without any personality at all. And the film is just totally all over the place at times. Sometimes it is just dead serious, and then in the next moment, within the very next scene, it's acting like a cartoon. It's constantly at war with itself over tone, and it just kind of leaves you feeling confused and just I never was just vibing with the movie while watching it. Where the original film, every scene was just filled with really bold character beats, quotable lines, and just had a gleefully exaggerated tone. The 2025 version is just determined to sand down every possible edge that it has. The result is just like a script that feels lifeless and so generic. I mean, if I was able to put a quote on the poster, if you wanted to quote me, go ahead. Generic. That's how I would describe Running Man 2025, directed by Edgar Wright. It's a dystopian thriller that's written in such broad strokes with just nothing really memorable to say, especially in a time where you can say a lot. There's plenty of material out there. It's a story that you could make in every decade, honestly. But the pacing issues, oh my God, the pacing in this, it only just makes the film even worse. Instead of embracing like, the tight escalating structure that made like the 87 film so fun, this version just drags its fucking feet. It doesn't help that it's like 35, 40 minutes longer. Like the first act is just so bloated with a setup that isn't particularly compelling, and you've seen it all before. And the second act just meanders through lulls where we go from character to character to character that is just essentially saving Glenn Powell's Ben Richards over and over and over again. And they just keep stating the same things, stuff that we already know, and it just makes it even more bland. It just frankly just isn't interesting. And the death game chase sequences, which you feel like that would be the highlight of the entire concept, they just arrive too sporadically. And without just the spark or creativity of the original film. The film just constantly and consistently, the one thing it does kill is its own momentum, no question. And it's just unable to maintain a suspense or any sense of excitement. It's just going through the motions. But what ultimately sinks the film is its complete lack of personality. Again, just how generic it feels. Like nearly every creative decision feels so overly cautious or self-serious. To the point where it's like, did Edgar Wright actually direct this? And it's only punctuated by like these kind of weird cartoon moments that kind of come out of nowhere. The world is just constantly, consistently just drenched in gray. The villains are indistinguishable. And the hero, Ben Richards, he just lacks the charisma needed to carry such a high concept narrative. Now, Glenn Powell, he just feels completely lost in this role. Mostly just going back and forth between feeling bad about his familial issues that got him into the game itself. He's basically in there. He's been blacklisted by by just the world itself, by America. He can't get a job, and he needs, to get a fucking medicine for his daughter who's sick, and I mean that's why he participates in this, right? And it goes from that of him just feeling bad for himself and sorry for himself to then just constantly screaming all the time. It's a very shrill performance that just got on my nerves halfway through. And eventually, I had nothing but disdain for the character by the end of the film. And you're not supposed to feel that way. You're not supposed to feel disdain towards Ben Richards, And then when it comes to the other characters, like, I could care less. Josh Brolin as Dan Killian. They've essentially split the Richard Dawson character of Damon Killian into two different characters, where Josh Brolin plays Dan Killian, who's essentially the show's producer, and you have Coleman Domingo as Bobby, who's the host of the Running Man show. And they have so little screen time and just so little presence, and that's horrible to say because it's Josh Brolin and Coleman Domingo. They have a lot of charisma. We've seen how good they can be in movies, but Edgar Wright, he just underutilizes them throughout the entire film. And so when they do pop up again, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot you were here. It's splitting up the Damon Killian character in these two was just a catastrophic mistake. They have no presence, much the same way that Glenn Powell just has so little presence in this movie. And just gone are the super flamboyant WWE style stalkers. Gone is just the manic, unforgettable showmanship of Richard Dawson as Damon Killian. Gone is the larger than life swagger of Schwarzenegger, who brought so much charisma to the role and was able to sell just over all those over the top lines. Listen. Glenn Powell, he's not be able to sell a line like, here's Sub-Zero, now just plain zero. Like, he can't do that. And Glenn Powell, he's a good actor. He is. But he does not have the charisma or charm of an Arnold Schwarzenegger. He just doesn't. And this version just tries so hard to be realistic and gritty that it just forgets to make the character likable at all. I just never once felt invested in his story, which is ridiculous because that's you should immediately feel that within the first 10 minutes of the movie. I think another aspect of this movie that's so disappointing is just the film's mishandling of the satire. Like the 1987 Running Man was delightfully absurd, you know, using the gaudy TV gladiator, American Gladiator concept to skewer media manipulation, state propaganda, of course, and the spectacle that is violence as entertainment. You know, it was loud, it was brash, but at the same time, it was surprisingly clever. And the 2025 remake, in contrast, it just offers nothing more than, you know, vague anti-authoritarian messaging delivered with a dour tone that just drains away the political sting. It's almost like it's afraid to criticize it, which is it's that sanding of the edges. It's like now more than ever would be a great time to call out shit like that, and it just feels afraid to. It wants to feel so important. It has such an air and arrogance of self-importance, but it just never actually says anything of actual substance. In the end, The Running Man, it's a film that just completely fails to recognize the heart of the story. You know, where the original was bold and colorful and vibrant and absurd. You know, the remake is gray. It's slow. It's devoid of charm. It's a fucking slog of a movie. It's barely technically competent, but it's just so emotionally hollow. And action dystopia with all the personality of a forgotten, toned down remake. You know, it has more in common with something like the 2010 era remakes of Total Recall or Conan the Barbarian. Funny enough, other films that Arnold Schwarzenegger did in the 80s and that, you know, Hollywood tried to do, and they were anything but good. A little bit of RoboCop energy in there, too, like 2014 RoboCop. Instead of updating a classic, Edgar Wright, funny enough, he inadvertently highlights how much better, smarter, and more entertaining the 1987 film truly was. You really walk away after, I'll tell you what, you watch an 87 movie, watch this, you're going to walk away with a huge new appreciation for the original film. And it's too bad because I think, you know, there's a lot of remakes that remakes in general I think can get a bad name. You know, they carry a lot of baggage, but we have gotten excellent remakes over the years. I mean, look behind me. You see my Thing poster back there, right? That's a remake. But like a remake, it can reinvent, it can reinterpret, or it can reimagine in great ways. And this one merely replaces. And it replaces everything worth keeping with far less, with uninspired ideas and writing and performances and concepts. I mean, the real question that needs to be asked right now is, what happened to Edgar Wright? What happened to you, man? What happened to you, Edgar Wright? You're like, what happened to the guy that made Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, or even Scott Pilgrim versus the World, like movies that I really enjoyed and thought were so funny and were wonderfully directed and written and edited. Like the editing itself is a language. I mean, it just has such a wonderful flow. Speaking of just Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, like two of the greatest comedies of the 21st century, which I don't think is hyperbolic to say. Now, Edgar Wright, he's making slop. He's been making some generic slop for quite a while now. And it's sad. It's very, very sad. But what about you guys? How do you feel about Edgar Wright's The Running Man? You know, are you as negative on it as I am? You know, or are you like, no, Chris, you know what the hell you're talking about. This is actually a really good movie. It's another fantastic film directed by Edgar Wright, who has never made a bad movie. And how dare you speak ill of him? How dare you? Sorry. Or are you more in the middle? You're more like, you know what? There's some stuff I like, some stuff I didn't like. Or again, are you with me and calling out this bullshit for what it is? Let me know.